Hi, this is Ren.
This is Casey.
And this is All Walks of Film.
And on the heels of the best episode of South Park this season, that's clearly trying to discuss the, very morally complicated issues of things like the Weinstein effect and the Me Too movement, New York Times, an article about Louis C.K., that before the article came out, they cut Louis C.K.'s new movie, I Love You, Daddy, in anticipation of this article that neither of us have read yet. So it's kind of like a fresh response to what the hell is going on. But before we say anything else, I have to say, because I don't know the situation yet, but I'm going to have to say I'm probably eating my own words. Because when we talked about the Harvey Weinstein effect and the Spacey effect, I specifically cited allegations against Louis C.K. as not something I necessarily believe yet. And I have a feeling that that's going right out the window. I don't know what's happened, but I don't even know what it's about or what it's concerning, but I know it's bad.
It's really bad. All right. Do you want to get into it?
I don't know. I'm kind of savoring these last few moments of actually being able to enjoy him as a comedian because he's one of my favorites.
Yeah, so this article just came out. It was kind of like teased throughout the day today. And we had heard allegations before about Louis C.K. masturbating in front of people. Mm-hmm. And right now, we're reading this article, which is essentially supposed to expose a different side of Louis C.K. Unfortunately, this is something that is common among celebrities. They feel that they have the power to do these things.
But with Louis C.K., it's so bizarre. I mean, it is kind of like the Bill Cosby thing where so much of his work is about being a normal, regular person, and so much of his comedy is about appreciating how he has all of these advantages in life, that it's really odd to me to think of somebody. I mean, and not always. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But then sometimes you're like, shit, I thought I had a good grasp on who you were as a person. What is this?
Yeah. All right. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I guess.
All right, so this article is called Louis C.K. is accused of sexual misconduct by 5 women. Before, we had only heard about, like one person, and it was like a rumor.
The only things I had seen on paper were, I've heard allegations, which is part of the reason why I didn't believe it. There was no, my friend told me this, or I experienced this, or I know someone who knows someone. It was always just sort of a, I've heard rumors about this.
Yeah. This is written by Milena Rizek, Kara Buckley, and Jody Cantor. So it starts out, in 2002, a comedy duo, Dana Min Goodman and Julia Woluf, landed their big break, a chance to perform at the U.S. Comedy Arts Festival in Aspen, Colorado. When Louis C.K. invited them to hang out in his hotel room for a nightcap after their late-night show, they did not think twice. The bars were closed, and they wanted to celebrate. He was a comedian they admired. The women would be together. His intentions seemed collegial. As soon as they sat down in his room, still wrapped up in their winter jackets and hats, Louis C.K. asked if he could take out his penis. The women said, They thought it was a joke and laughed it off. And then he really did it. Miss Goodman said in an interview with the New York Times, he proceeded to take off all of his clothes and get completely naked and start masturbating. In 2003, Abby Schachner called Louis C.K. and invited him to one of her shows. And during the phone conversation, she said she could hear him masturbating as they spoke. Another comedian, Rebecca Corey, said that while she was appearing with Louis C.K. on a television pilot in 2005, he asked if he could masturbate in front of her. She declined. Now, after years of unsubstantiated rumors about Louis C.K. masturbating in front of associates, women are coming forward to describe what they experienced. Even amid the current burst of sexual misconduct accusations against powerful men, the stories about Louis C.K. stand out because he has so few equals in comedy. In the years since the incidents, he has sold out Madison Square Garden 8 times, created an Emmy award-winning TV series, and accumulated the clout of a tastemaker and auteur with the help of a manager who represents some of the biggest names in comedy. And Louis C.K. built a reputation as the unlikely conscience of the comedy scene, by making audiences laugh about hypocrisy, especially male hypocrisy.
I will agree with that, because that's one of the really interesting things about these rumors is when you watch the show or whenever you watch his comedy, he has like such a self-aware, deprecative look at male sex drive. You know, he has like images where like he has a thing on his show where he's in an elevator with this sexy woman and the woman leaves, and you know, he goes to his hotel room and he tries to fantasize about her and tries to masturbate to her, which is really creepy. But it's creepy, the fantasy becomes more and more convoluted and fucked up and unappealing. And he can't even finish because it just becomes like so ridiculous, because it's like his guilt of fetishizing a real person, you know. Or like in his stand-up, he has like this thing where he makes fun of like of like people masturbating to women on the news, where like the news anchor is like, war has broken out in Libya, and he's like, oh yeah, tell me about Libya. You know, and it's always really funny, but it's always from this perspective of like, and he talks about this explicitly too a lot of times, about how much he hates his own sex drive, like the stupid things he thinks of. Like he's made jokes about like, you know, men can't say good things to women without saying something awful, like, you're so beautiful, you look like an angel, and I want to rip off your wings and drown you in my cum, you know, something like that. Like, he's always been so self-aware of it. And before we get further in this, my kind of knee-jerk reaction is, it seems like a lot of that is coming from a place of regret over these situations.
Yeah. And, you know, I will say that, you know, one of my favorite episodes of Louis was an episode, you know, I think that you referred to, about him like trying to masturbate and like never at the appropriate time. And then like he's trying to masturbate while the news is playing. And he's going, but like the news gets so fucked up that he can't continue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like he keeps getting distracted by like what's actually happening in the real world.
Yeah. After being contacted for an interview this week about the on-record accusations of sexual misconduct place over a decade ago, Louis C.K.'s publicist, Louis K., said the comedian would not respond. Louis is not going to answer any questions, Mr. K wrote in an email Tuesday night.
See, this is the thing, though, is like, it would be one thing. I don't know if he has any intention of doing it. It would be one thing if he came out and he was like, yeah, this was in the past. I was fucked up. It was wrong of me to do this. I want people to look at my behavior and say that's not okay. You know, publicly about these allegations. True. And now he's like refusing to comment, and now he's just like, oh, gonna cut my movie instead.
I don't know if the movie's being cut.
From what I've heard, and this is only what I've heard, this can always change, but from what I've heard, it's cut.
Oh, like altogether?
Yeah.
Okay.
That could change, obviously. I'm not the be-all, end-all of what's going on in the movie industry, but I heard opening weekend, or like the first showing, like the opening screening was cut, and then I heard that the movie was cut.
Wow.
So it could be an exaggeration, or it could be true.
Neither Louis C.K. nor Mr. K replied to the follow-up emails in which accusations were laid out in detail, or to voice messages or texts. On Thursday, the premiere of Louis C.K.'s new movie, I Love You, Daddy, was abruptly canceled, and he also canceled an appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Maybe he was just bidding on eBay.
What?
There's an episode where he plays himself on Portlandia, and he cancels an entire show because he was on eBay.
Okay.
And he called like, oh, I had a family emergency, guys, sorry. And then, you know, Fred and Carrie see him at a coffee shop, and they're like, the fuck are you doing? He's like, okay, there's this thing on eBay, and I really wanted it.
The stories told by the women raise sharp questions about the anecdotes that Louis C.K. tells in his own comedy. He rose to fame in part by appearing to be candid about his flaws and sexual hang-ups, discussing and miming masturbation extensively in his act. An exaggerated riff that some of the women feel may have served for real misconduct. He has all but invited comparison between his private life and his on-screen work, too. In I Love You, Daddy, which is scheduled to be released next week, a character pretends to masturbate at length in front of other people, and other characters appear to dismiss rumors of sexual predation. At the same time, Louis C.K. has also boasted the careers of women and is sometimes viewed as a feminist by fans and critics. But Miss Goodman and Miss Woluf said that while they told others about the incident in the Colorado hotel room, they heard Louis C.K.'s manager was upset, and they were talking about it openly. The women feared career repercussions. Louis C.K.'s manager, Becky, was also adamant in an email that he never threatened anyone.
Well, it does seem like he wasn't threatening anybody. That doesn't make it okay. You know, I hate saying this because I don't think there's even a point to comparing it. But just on a logistical level, it's not the same thing as the Weinstein thing, where Weinstein was predatory sexually and also, you know, he was threatening.
Well,
Louis C.K. was not. It doesn't seem from these allegations he was being threatening or that women were fearing for their safety, but that doesn't make it acceptable or excusable or more okay than what anybody else is doing. Like, you can't compare them just because it's never okay to sexually harass or assault somebody.
Yeah.
Just because, oh, they might not have been fearing for their life, that doesn't make it okay. Just because, oh, as bad as what, like, Kevin Spacey or Weinstein or Trump are doing, that's not a free pass. That's not okay.
I think the line gets crossed when you take off all of your clothes and start masturbating, Miss Woluf said.
Yeah. Without consent.
You want to believe it's not happening. Miss Corey, a comedian, writer, and actress, has long felt haunted by her run-in with Louis C.K. In 2005, she was working as a performer and producer on a television pilot, a big step in her career, when Louis C.K., a guest star, approached her as she was walking to the set. He leaned close to my face and said, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "Yes," Miss Corey said in a written statement to the New York Times. He asked if we could go to my dressing room in front of me. Stunned and angry, Miss Corey said she declined and pointed out that she had a daughter and a pregnant wife, that he had a daughter and a pregnant wife. His face got red, she recalled, and he told me he had issues.
No shit. Again, that doesn't excuse anything.
Right. Words quickly reached the show's executive producers, Courtney Cox and David Arquette, who both confirmed the incident. "What happened to Rebecca on the set was awful," Miss Cox said in an email, adding that she felt outrage and shock. My concern was to create an environment where Rebecca felt safe, protected, and heard, she said. They discussed curtailing the production. Miss Corey decided to continue with the show. "Things were going well for me," Miss Corey said in a statement, "and I had no interest in being the person who shut down a production." A fifth woman, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to protect her family's privacy because she is not publicly linked to the incident with Louis C.K., also has disturbing memories about an incident with a comedian. In the late 90s, she was working in a production at the Chris Rock show when Louis C.K., a writer and producer there, repeatedly asked her to watch him masturbate, she said. She was in her early 20s and went along with his request, but later questioned his behavior. "It was something that I knew was wrong," said the woman, who described sitting in Louis C.K.'s office while he masturbated in his desk chair during a workday. Other colleagues just outside of the door. "I think the big piece of why I said yes was because of the culture," she continued. "He abused his power." A co-worker at the Chris Rock show, who also wished to remain anonymous, confirmed that the woman told him about the experience soon after it happened. Miss Schachner, a writer, illustrator, and performer, admired Louis C.K.'s work. They had met in the comedy scene. Miss Schachner's former boyfriend was a comedy writer who worked with Louis C.K. In 2003, when she called Louis C.K. with an invitation to her show, he said he was at work in an office as a writer in the series Cedric the Entertainer Presents, she recalled. Their conversation quickly moved from the personal. Louis C.K. had seen photos of her on her boyfriend's desk, he said, and told her that he was cute. To be unprofessional and inappropriate, Miss Schachner said. She said she heard the blinds coming down. Then he slowly started telling her his sexual fantasies, breathing heavily and talking softly. She realized he was masturbating and was dumbfounded. The call went on for several minutes, even though Miss Schockner said, "I definitely wasn't encouraging it." But she didn't know how to end it either. "You want to believe it's not happening," she said. A friend, Stuart Harris, confirmed that Miss Schockner had described the call to him in 2003. For years afterwards, Miss Schockner said she felt angry and betrayed by an artist she looked up to, and she wondered what she could have done differently. "I felt very ashamed," she said. A run-in, then fears speaking out. A run-in, then fears about speaking out. During Miss Goodman and Miss Wolof's surreal visit to Louis C.K.'s Aspen hotel room, they said they were holding on to each other, screaming and laughing in shock, as Louis C.K. masturbated in a chair. "We were paralyzed," Miss Goodman said, after he ejaculated on his stomach. They said they fled. He called after them. He was like, "Which one is Dana and which one is Julia?" Miss Goodman recalled. Afterwards, they ran into Sharna Halpern, the owner of influential improv theaters in Los Angeles and Chicago, where Miss Goodman and Miss Woluf performed, and relayed what had happened. "I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to tell them to do," said Miss Halpern. Miss Goodman and Miss Woluf decided against going to the police, unsure whether what happened was criminal, but felt they had to respond in some way. "Because something crazy happened to us," Miss Goodman said. Hoping that outrage would build against Louis C.K. and also to shame him, they began telling others about the incident the next day. Said, "Guys were backing away from us," Miss Woluf said. "Barely 24 hours after they left Louis C.K.'s hotel, we could already feel the backlash." Soon after, they said they understood from their managers that Mr. Becky, Louis C.K.'s manager, wanted them to stop telling people about their encounter with Louis C.K. Lee Kernis, one of the women's managers at the time, confirmed on Thursday that they had that conversation in which he told Mr. Becky that Louis C.K.'s behavior towards women had been offensive. Mr. Kernis also said that Mr. Becky was upset that the women were talking openly about the incident. Mr. Becky denied making any threats towards the women. "I don't recall the exact specifics of the conversation, but I know I never threatened anyone," he wrote by email on Thursday. Miss Halpern and Robert Schroeder, Miss Goodman and Miss Wolof's agent at the time, said that the pair told them that they had been warned to stop talking. Mr. Becky arguably wields even more power in comedy than Louis C.K. He represents Kevin Hart, Aziz Ansari, Amy Poehler, and other top performers. And his company, 3 Arts, puts together programming deals for nearly every platform. Miss Goodman and Miss Woluf moved to Los Angeles shortly after the Aspen Festival. "But we were coming here with a bunch of enemies," Miss Goodman said. Gren Wells, a filmmaker who befriended the comedy duo in 2002, said the incident and the warning, which they told her about soon after Aspen, hung heavily over them both. "This is something that they were freaked out about," Miss Wells said. In the years since, Miss Goodman and Miss Woluf have found some success, but they remain concerned about Mr. Becky and took themselves out of the running for many projects he was involved in. Though their humor is in line with what he produces. We know immediately that we can never even submit our material, Ms. Woluf said. Private acts and public jokes. Jokes about masturbation have been a regular part of Louis C.K.'s stage shows. In one bit, he complains about not being able to find a private place in his house to do it. I'm in the streets now, he says. I've got nowhere to go. In another bit, he laments being a prisoner of his perversions. Just the constant perverted sex, he says, then mimes masturbating. It makes me a moron. Tig Notaro, the comedian whose Amazon series One Mississippi lists Louis C.K. as an executive producer, is one of the few in the fiercely insular comedy world who to speak out against him. Her career received a huge boost when he released her 2012 comedy album about her cancer diagnosis. But the relationship has crumbled, and now she feels trapped by her own association with him, she wrote in an email. Her fear is that he released my album to cover his tracks, she said. He knew it was going to make him look like a good guy, supporting a woman. Miss Notaro, said she learned of his reputation after they sold the series to Amazon. And a recent storyline is a fictional treatment of the alleged masturbation episodes. Sadly, I've come to learn that Louis C.K.'s victims are not only real, she said by email, but there are actual friends of mine within the comedy community. Like Miss Corey, who confided in her, she said. In his forthcoming film about a television writer whose teenage daughter is wooed by a Woody Allen type.
Because it was specifically inspired by Woody Allen movies, specifically Manhattan, which I didn't realize, and I'm not going to lie, kind of makes me not that sad that it was pulled, but also makes this entire situation more disturbing.
Yeah. One character aggressively mimics masturbating in front of others. The content has raised eyebrows. Given the rumors surrounding Louis C.K., the movie plays like an ambiguous moral inventory of an excuse for everything that allows sexual predators to thrive. Open secrets, toxicity, and powerful people getting the benefit of the doubt, Joe Berkowitz wrote in Fast Company. Yet in an interview with The Times in September at the Toronto Film Festival, where I Love You, Daddy was shown, Louis C.K. dismissed the stories of his alleged sexual misconduct as rumors and said that the notion that his masturbation scenes referred to them never occurred to him. It's funny, I didn't even think of that, he said. Which, you know,
sounds like fucking bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, covering his own tracks and just...
I am so biased towards Louis C.K. And I would very much like to think that, oh, this is something he's moved on and gotten past, but everything like this just makes you go, no, he didn't.
Yeah. Somebody here in the comments says, really surprised about this. I met him once in 2008, and he seemed like a really normal person.
Well, like,
I guess you can never really tell.
Yeah, I mean, like that story where the women are like, oh, you know, he invited us to our hotel. We were all hanging out together. It all seemed cool. I'd feel safe doing that around Louis C.K. Like, he's definitely one of those guys where, like, it wouldn't even occur to me that something stupid like that would happen.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you never really can tell with some people.
And by the way, this is why we get this big movement of men who lament that women seem to hate all men, or like women just can't take any kind of like compliment, or, you know, women are interested in being, you know, picked up or anything like that, is because the women can't tell whether or not you're a decent guy. They can't tell whether or not you're going to axe murder them or rape them or harass them or threaten them with a gun. They have no fucking idea, so they just say no.
Yeah, and being somebody who like has been around this kind of culture, like, you know, I will openly admit that I've done things that like were questionable. I never did anything without people's consent, but you know, it was kind of like one of those things where, you know, I got to look at myself for these things.
But that's one of the best elements of this Me Too thing. And the other side of this is, of course, there are the really terrible people on both sides who are just like, well, nuh-uh, or like, oh, well, it must be your fault, or, you know, oh, well, not everyone's like that. But then you have people who genuinely say, hey, this has opened my eyes, and I have to, you know, say publicly for everyone I know, I've engaged in this sort of behavior and it was wrong. We need to talk about this openly so this happens less and less.
Yeah, and you know, for a lot of this stuff, it's like, you know, crossing gray lines. You know, it's stuff that's like inappropriate, uncomfortable. It's not, you know, the extremes like Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein, and that's something that we need to talk about as well. You know,
and blurred lines. I mean, like, that's the thing, is that the gray lines are different to everybody. Clearly, they're different to people like Louis C.K. or Harvey Weinstein or Robin Thicke, you know?
Yeah. Now, I will emphasize that these are people in a position of power. So even if it's in a gray line where it's like, oh, well, you know, there was some sort of verbal consent or something with that first incident, it kind of sounded like that. Like there was some degree of verbal consent, which is not to say that it was appropriate.
Do you mean to say, do you mean to say verbal consent or non-verbal consent?
I guess, I think they said it was okay. Like in the first incident in the article.
In the hotel?
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed like they just laughed it off.
So it was neither.
There was one interview where a woman said it was okay.
Okay. So, you know, that being said, you know, it is entering a more gray zone than other situations where it's uncomfortable, it's inappropriate, but, you know, like verbal non-consent or whatever wasn't given, or
right.
You get what I'm saying? I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm not trying to be permissive of it. I'm just saying that, like, you know, this is a case where, you know, the lines are a little bit grayed, and, you know, I don't know about criminal charges for that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if a police officer was going to look at that, they'd be like, well, did you say no or stop or anything at that time? And then, yeah.
And that's the thing that I think I'm foreseeing with this case, is that a lot of people are going to compare it to Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey and say, oh, see, everything's fine. Look, you guys laughed at it. Oh, look, you said yes to it. Oh, see, he asked. He asked if he could do this, you know, and when you said no, he didn't do it, you know. But that there is a coercive nature to sexual harassment and misconduct. there is definitely, you know, as was pointed out, oh, by the way, don't you have a wife and kids? You know, some people are in an open relationship, but that doesn't seem to be the case, and you got to lead with talking about. And yes, of course, it's better to ask, obviously, if you want to have sex with somebody or masturbate in front of them. Asking is definitely a good place to start, but you've got to take context into account. Good man, he's their, you know, their colleague, so they think, and then he treats them with disrespect, which is disturbing. But then also, a lot of what he's doing is messing with them.
How so?
Things like, you know, people are like, oh, he's joking. This is the nature of his style of humor.
Yeah.
You know, which is how people get themselves in this situation. If it was another person, then they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't be okay. Like, they wouldn't be sitting there laughing about the notion of that, because coming from Louis C.K., it seems so ridiculous. It does seem like a joke.
Yeah.
But also there is this thing of, even if it happens once or twice, maybe there's a redeemability there, but when you're told repeatedly that it's not okay and that you're making women uncomfortable, and again, your colleagues,
Yeah,
that you're making them upset and you're making them uncomfortable and what you're doing is wrong, and then you continue to say, well, I did nothing, there's no truth to these allegations, it never even occurred to me that my sense of humor has anything to do with that.
Yeah, that's the fucked up part. Like, you know, to essentially admit to the fact that, like, you had these situations, but you were, you know, deviant and like trying to do stuff, but like you thought it was consensual and all that kind of stuff. Like, to be forthright about that is more redeemable than, you know, to brush it off.
Exactly.
And now have it.
Well, and he's just outright denying it.
Yeah.
And that's fucked up. He's not even saying, and I'm not saying it would be okay if he did this, but he's himself in a, oh, well, yes, I did do something along those lines, but it wasn't like this. Or like, oh, I did that, but they were laughing. They were, you know, they said, yes, it's fine. It was consent. No, he's just saying, oh, there's no truth to it. Nothing happened.
Yeah. Apologies with troubling implications. In private, though, he appears to have acknowledged his behavior. In 2009, 6 years after their phone call, Ms. Schachner received a Facebook message from Louis C.K. apologizing. Last time I talked to you ended in a sordid fashion, he wrote in a message, which was received by the Times. It was a bad time in my life, and I'm sorry. He added that he had seen some of Ms. Schachner's comedy and thought she was funny. I remember thinking, what a repulsive person I was being by responding the way I did, he wrote. Ms. Schachner accepted his apology and told him she forgave him. But the original interaction left her deeply dispirited, she said, and discouraged her from pursuing comedy. In 2015, a few months before the now defunct website Defamer circulated rumors of Louis C.K.'s alleged sexual misconduct, Ms. Corey also received an email from Louis C.K., which was obtained by the Times, saying he owed her a very, very, very late apology, which he phoned her and he said he was sorry for shoving her in a bathroom. Ms. Corey replied that he had never done that, but instead asked to masturbate in front of her. Responding in a shaky voice, he acknowledged it and said, I used to misread people back then, she recalled.
So it's like a Weinstein situation where he doesn't even remember what he's been doing?
I'm not saying this is, but, you know, it's possible that this could be drugs.
Oh, yeah, he could definitely be under... I mean, I don't think it's wrong to point out that that could easily be the case, because that doesn't make it okay, but it kind of sounds like that's what's going on.
Yeah, and, you know, that being said, that's not excusing the behavior, but, you know, I will say that when people are impaired, the unfortunate thing is they oftentimes do things that they can't recall and remember. I mean, hell, alcohol will do that.
Mm-hmm.
But this sounds less like, you know, somebody who, you know, made a mistake once and was like, holy shit, you know, what did I do? And this sounds more like, you know, somebody who's...
prolonged behavior.
Yeah.
From someone who thinks that it's acceptable.
The call confounded her, Miss Corey said. Not only had he misremembered the incident, which made her think that there were other moments of misconduct, he also implied she had done something to invite his behavior. It is unfair. It's unfair. He's put me or anyone else in this position, Miss Corey said. Miss Goodman and Miss Woluf said that with other allegations swirling around the entertainment world, they could no longer stay silent. Because of this moment, as gross as it is, we feel compelled to speak, Miss Goodman said. Miss Notaro said she was standing in support of those with the courage to speak out against such a powerful figure, she said. The multitude of women still out there, not quite ready to share their nightmares.
I will say that is kind of what's really interesting about this, is that these are the sorts of incidents that people who are victimized by this kind of behavior laugh and shrug off and try to pretend is okay, because it's one of those things where it seems so casual that what else are you going to do about it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really tough because, you know, oftentimes when people are in this situation, they, you know, they are petrified. And, you know, it's one of those situations where I don't know from experience. I mean, I did witness something like this when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I want to go into detail about that now, but, you know, maybe a little bit later. But witnessed something similar to this with an older kid. I don't know if I could, I mean, they were like 17 at the time, so 16, 17. I don't remember how old they were, but, you know, saying from experience, it is like a really uncomfortable situation, and you don't really know how to respond to it, you know, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's really interesting, though, because this is, you know, like I said before, much more in the gray zone. You know, like it's morally wrong and apprehensible, but it's not like Harvey Weinstein, like crazy, which is, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No, that's exactly how a lot of people will put it. But that's what makes it difficult for things like this to come out, is because when you complain about something like this, you get the response of like, so that's not that bad. It's not like you were raped.
I guess my question is, in your eyes, is this redeemable? Like,
almost anything is redeemable depending on how you behave towards it. And it could be redeemable, but his behavior towards it now in a public light is irredeemable.
To constantly deny that it happened.
To constantly deny that it happened, to just pull away from it, to not face the situation. And there are people, like with the Weinstein case, there was particularly one man who was like, I knew it was happening, and I was an asshole for not doing something about it, and I was wrong, and we need to change that. In my opinion, that makes him redeemable. If Louis C.K. were to say, this was me from a long time ago, I have problems, you can tell with my work, I don't want to emulate this, please look at this past behavior and see that it's wrong. And he's not doing any of that. He's denying it. He's failing to take responsibility for it. He's failing to do anything to prevent it from being perpetuated. And that's what's making this situation more irredeemable than it could have been.
Yeah. I will say also it's heartbreaking because Louis C.K. Was my absolute favorite comedian, living comedian. And, you know, to a certain extent still will be, you know, because I try to separate the art from the artist. Granted, with masturbation jokes, not so much. But yeah, I mean, it's just hard because, you know, you want to look up to these people. You want to view these people as role models. You want to admire people for the work that they make, you know, the artists and their art. But one thing that I've noticed, especially with older work, you know, some of the allegations and stuff that came out about older artists is, unfortunately, the truth of the matter is most great artists are a little fucked up or a lot fucked up.
But you can still do something with that. Most people are fucked up in some capacity.
Yeah, and I think it's important, you know, if you're somebody, you know, with these thoughts and all that kind of stuff, you know, to use art as a medium to express yourself, to express your sinister side, to express your deviations, because that's a lot better than action. You can still maintain a fantasy without reenacting it. I mean, look at fiction, you know, I mean, you know, what are we going to call out every writer who wrote something like Deviant? No. You know, well, it's like, look at Vladimir Nabokov, you know, that's a morally reprehensible book. You know,
but that's also the purpose of the book.
Right. And, you know, the author himself was, you know, to my knowledge, not a pedophile, but like trying to illustrate.
What really sucks is so much of Louis C.K.'s own words apply so well to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's one where he talks about an experience where he was trying to hook up with this girl and she was like making out with him, but anytime he tried to do anything, she would push his hands away, so he didn't try anything. And then the next day, she, you know, he was like, hey, you know, it seemed like things were going really well. What happened? And she's like, oh, well, I just really like it when a guy just like takes me and pushes me down and like, you know, is forcible. And he was like, oh, well, you should have told me that. I would have done that. And she's like, no, it ruins it if you ask for it. And he's like, what the fuck are you supposed to do? Just hope that some chick that you're with is randomly into being raped? Like, you can't do that.
Yeah, so this article came with a video. Would you want to see that?
Oh, man. That's really rough. That's really difficult to take, man. So, yes.
Recycle and I masturbate. I'm a good father. I recycle and I masturbate. And I'm proud of it. And God's happy. And later I'm going to masturbate and I'm going to think about you.
Louis C.K. has built one of the most successful careers in comedy.
these days my problem is very simple. It's trying to find a place in my house where I can masturbate without somebody bothering me. And that's really difficult.
With jokes about awkward encounters and sexual hang-ups.
I was with one really hot woman once, and she got very drunk and slept with me. And the next morning, I remember her looking down at me, and she was so horrified. And she just looked at me like, ah, like I feel like felt like she had raped herself with me somehow.
He often discusses and mimes masturbation in its act.
And he kept doing that gesture that guys like to do. That's my favorite dumb guy gesture yet.
Now 5 women have told the New York Times that the comedian's riffs about masturbation have a disturbing connection to real life. The women allege that he either masturbated in front of them or asked if he could, or did it over the phone. Julia Woluf and Dana Min Goodman, a Chicago comedy duo, said that during a 2002 visit to Louis C.K.'s Aspen hotel room, he got completely naked and masturbated in a chair. The comedian Rebecca Corey said that while she was appearing with Louis C.K. on a television pilot in 2005, he asked if he could masturbate in front of her. Louis C.K.'s publicist said the comedian would not respond to the Times report.
So, I mean, that was just reiterating, but I think it's important to give context to the humor that he has.
It's so difficult. It's fucked up. He's funny. Like, even knowing this, I'm still kind of laughing at it. It's, fucked up, man.
Yeah, it's really awkward because, like, part of you wants to say, you still like the humor.
But the humor is all about this stuff. It's like Birth of a Nation, where it's like, you can't look at it and not think about it, but...
Yeah, and there are times where you have to separate the art from the artist, but, you know, that's in context. I mean, that's when their material isn't in context of, like, what, when their material doesn't contextualize what they've been doing. Like,
it's also,
you know,
a
the
little
whole
bit
thing
different.
with...
It's also a little bit different when it's not an art medium that's about you. Like, when you talk about, you know, Roman Polanski as a person versus what you can incite from his work on Rosemary's Baby, well, to be fair, you can get that from Rosemary's Baby without knowing anything about Roman Polanski or his life, and can interpret the work of art on its own. Whereas everything about Louis C.K.'s work, from his stand-up to his TV show, is all about who he is.
Yeah.
And what goes on in his mind and how he thinks, which is what makes it really difficult to take.
And right now, I think he should be open about it. I think he should, you know, make a public apology, and he should apologize with the women. Possibly, I don't know if this is even possible because, you know, he's already set up a barrier of uncomfortability. But I do think that he should, you know, come out and try to appear with himself and the women. I don't know if that's possible.
Well, also, who knows if they would even want to do that?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I think it could be helpful and important for other people, which it just, this is really hard for me, you know, because Louis C.K., I'm not a huge comedian person. Like, you know, I'm not into comedy that much, but like Louis C.K. was my comedy guy. Whenever I, you know, talked to people and said that, you know, I'm into comedy and all that kind of stuff, you know, I'd say, like, you know, I like I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time talking right now. I liked him. A lot of comedians just don't jive with me. Just like, but there was something so personal and so humiliating about him that I liked because I saw myself in him to like a certain extent, and like now it's just uncomfortable, because you look at this and you look at all these incidences and part of you just, the stuff with Jeffrey Tambor that just came out, he was on Arrested Development and on that show
Transparent.
Yeah,
he's been accused of some stuff now too.
Yeah, part of you just, you want it to stop because it's not that you allegations to come out, but like part of you just wants to stop because you like these things, and it's just I've gotten to the point now, growing up on this stuff, like entertainment is my life, entertainment, watching movies, watching comedy, stuff like this and all this stuff, like that's what I've grown with, and like seeing this, it just breaks my heart.
Especially someone like Louis C.K., where the power of his comedy was being able to come to terms with and laugh at really horrendous shit. And now it's not a joke anymore.
Well, yeah, and I used to go to bat arguing for Louis C.K., like using the N-word in his comedy and like doing all that kind of stuff. And
well,
like,
that's just free speech. I'm sorry, but
well,
it
yeah.
is.
But like I used to go to bat for Louis C.K. like all the time because
masturbating in front of women without their explicit consent is not part of free speech.
Right.
I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm just laying that out there.
Yeah, it's really tough. So for the people watching right now, what do you have to say about this incident? And you can write in the chat. I'm looking at it right now, so I'm gonna open it up for free discussion. We're gonna talk, but if you have any comments to make, we'll listen to them. Yeah, this is really hard for me. Mm-hmm. And this is pretty much a candid response because I didn't read the articles before coming to this podcast.
I didn't even know what the allegations were on it. I mean, I did because I had vaguely heard about it, but I didn't know if this was going to even be related to that. Yeah,
and if you go back to the podcast, the live stream that we did yesterday, we talked briefly about him, but like we didn't think it was that serious. But like,
it's not that I didn't think it was that serious. It was one of those things where you hear allegations like that, and because they're so inconclusive, for me personally, I was like, it's not that I don't believe it. It's just I don't know if I should believe it.
Right.
And now I feel like an asshole, and I'm gonna come out and publicly say I was an asshole for thinking that. Although, I mean, my line of thinking was, it's not that I don't believe people, it's just I don't have someone to believe their word. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, clearly we do, but honestly, that's so difficult for people who've been victimized like this to come out and say these things. You shouldn't have to rely on that. Not everyone can afford to come out and I mean, to be fair, like, there are some people who have come forward and have remained anonymous, and please respect their anonymity. But I definitely have my foot in my mouth.
Yeah, and just since yesterday, like we found out about the Charlie Sheen.
Oh, yes.
And while we don't know the full extent, I would like to believe them at their word. in their accusations, and some of Charlie Sheen's behavior do seem to indicate that he did something like that. Yeah, I mean, it's just really tough because, like, you know, where do you draw the line? You know, and at least for me, my argument is always, if you can separate their behavior from their work, then it's okay. You know, like if, you know, somebody comes out as like, you know, sexually assaulting or, you know, doing all this kind of stuff, but like none of their work.
You know, like I can still respect Lars von Trier's movies, even though he said he's a Nazi sympathizer, whether or not that's true. His work doesn't reflect that. But that's also not, it's, people will disagree with me on this, but I don't think that's the most horrendous thing in the world either.
Yeah, you know, but other people, like, you know, I can't watch the Cosby Show anymore.
Well, yeah, because they won't air it anymore.
Well, yeah. But like, I remember growing up, and I thought Ghost Dad was pretty funny. I know that movie is like crap.
You what?
Yeah, I know. Okay.
You liked Ghost Dad? Oh my god.
Okay. Can I make my argument?
No, you cannot make your argument. You cannot defend Ghost Dad.
Okay, there was a scene.
Oh man, no.
Okay, there was a scene in Ghost Dad where there was like this Satanist that thought Bill Cosby was Satan returned, and he was like toying with him, and then the guy was like, "Oh, hail Satan," you know, blah blah, and I thought that was extremely funny. I was like 12 years old. Give me a break.
No, I will not give you a break for Ghost Dad. It's not the worst thing he's ever done, you know, in terms of movies, but still not acceptable.
Yeah, somebody just said in the comments, Ghost Dad's pretty bad.
Yeah, Ghost Dad is pretty bad.
Have you seen it? Have you actually watched?
Yes, I have. It's
okay, you didn't just watch
horrible.
the Nostalgia Critic talk about it?
I don't think he has talked about it.
I think he has.
Oh, has he really?
I'm pretty sure he has.
Well, I didn't know that.
I saw some review on it.
Okay, well, no. Ghost... okay, well, but for a while, there was, like, I don't think these came out at the same time, but I happened to see them at the same time. This is probably part of the reason why I hate paranormal in horror movies, is because, like, I think right around the same time, I saw Ghost Dad and the movie Ghost, and I was just like, you know what? Fuck this shit. No. Fuck ghosts. Fuck this shit.
Yeah, he says he saw it as a kid and it was bad.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to assume your gender, but I'm going to assume you're a guy right now.
No, it is bad. It's really bad. You just had... I can't say you had bad taste, but I will say you were watching 2001 at that same time. Like, what the hell, man?
Dude, I told you this before. One of the reasons why I'm so critical on movies now is because when I was growing up, I used to love or like almost every movie I saw. You know, there was like a certain level where I was like, oh, this is okay. Or like, oh, I love this. Or
Ghost Dad? No wonder you like... No wonder you like the first Transformers movie.
I like the first 3 Transformers movies, you know, as like guilty pleasures. Because, like, dude, when the first line...
Not even the first one, the first 3?
Yeah, dude, when the
Oh, my God. You are disqualified from the podcast, man.
No.
You gotta go.
I gotta explain myself.
No.
No, I gotta explain myself. I like them in an ironic way.
No!
Dude, okay,
They're too long and obnoxious and boring to be ironic.
The first line in the first Transformers was, in the beginning, there was the cube. And I started laughing my ass off, like right at the very beginning.
That's not nearly as funny as, like... smells like balls. I mean,
Well,
come
yeah,
on.
And by the way, we had the worst audience for that movie. But like, I don't know, man. Like, I just watched this movie. Like, yeah, the first
I don't know either, man.
The first three were guilty pleasures for me, and then like afterwards,
that's just bad. That's just bad.
I can at least say that the fourth one was the straw that broke the camel's back.
I don't know why. There was no difference between the fourth one and the first three, except for the fact that 2 and 3 were more egregious and offensive.
Yeah. He said, no worries, I'm a guy, and I like the first Transformers movie too, not the others, though.
See, hey. You didn't even say the first one. You said the first 3, and I am literally standing up in anger right now.
But the sequence with the squirrel suits in the third movie was really cool.
And the mom with the masturbation and skin and mud flaps and robot balls, which all sound way more interesting than they actually are. Like, that's the thing, is it's not even that they have these ridiculous situations, it's that they make them boring. Like, really bland and boring and unwatchable.
Yeah, but that being said, like,
also the reason why you like Transformers is because you haven't seen Heavy Metal.
Okay. So
the actual Transformers movie. The one only actual Transformers movie.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna
admit how much you love Batman v Superman too?
That movie sucks.
Oh, you mean like sucks? Like it sucks on your dick because it's so good?
Oh my god, stop. Stop.
Ghost Dad, though. I mean, my guilty pleasure movie is the Amazing Spider-Man movies, because there's actually something redeemable to those. I will be the first one to admit that Amazing Spider-Man 2 had a terrible script. Interesting things that were working for it. That's not Ghost Dad and Transform. Like, ew. Who are you?
All right, so let's get into all the stuff that like Louis C.K. has actually done. Do we want to? How do we want to do this? Do we want to go with what he's acted in, or like what he's been a creative force behind?
I mean, he's done some executive producing work. One Mississippi, for example, but he's mostly famous for doing his stand-up comedy and then his TV show Louis C.K., which is
you mean just Louis?
Or yeah, Louis. That's basically just, you know, his stand-up with a production budget. Like, if you watch the TV show and you watch his stand-up, you can see a lot of the same stories and a lot of the same ideas and themes and characters. And I know that he was working with Pam on Better Things. He was an executive producer on that show because the lead creator and actress on Better Things is his love interest on the show, and she's an executive producer on Louis, so they're kind of like working together.
Yeah, I don't know what this is going to lead to. I don't know if this is going to be transgression that gets forgiven or whether he's out.
I mean, if nothing had happened yet on his behalf, I'd be like, you know, something could happen, but seeing his behavior after the fact, even if he did come out and say something now, I don't know if I could forgive him.
Yeah. He's supposed to have a new TV show coming out called The Cops.
Yeah.
In 2018.
It's probably based on that one skit on his show where he tried to be a cop.
Yeah. Oh, it's an animated show.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it still might come out, but like they'll probably take him off of it.
Mm-hmm.
He worked on Baskets as a writer. That's the show with what's his name? Zach Galifianakis. It's like a sort of serious show about mime.
Oh God, it's about mimes?
I think so.
Ugh. And everyone lived happily ever after, except for the mime.
Either that, or it's
Everyone
about
hates
like
mimes.
either that, or it's about like a clown or something like that. I don't know.
Clowns are better than mimes.
Yeah.
Fuck mimes.
Yeah.
And just for the record, yes, that was an Animaniacs reference to their Christmas movie.
Yeah. He worked on Lucky Louie, which
Of course. He brings that up in his show Louie. There's an episode where he's working on a sitcom and he hates it and it doesn't make any sense to him. And that sitcom in real life is the Lucky Louie show that he was on.
And HBO said that they pulled all of his content.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Whoa, what?
Yeah.
He's getting the full Cosby treatment, really?
I think so.
Well, I know Louis was on Netflix. Is everybody pulling his content?
Yeah.
He has stuff on HBO. He
Is,
has stuff on Amazon Prime. He's got stuff on Netflix.
I'm looking at IGN right now, and I know IGN isn't like a real news site, but they do like report on.
Well, especially things in entertainment.
Yeah. So, yeah, they said HBO pulls past Louis C.K. projects from on demand.
So but that's mostly stand up.
Mostly stand up, probably Lucky Louie as well, because that was an HBO show. Yeah, they and there were a couple specials that were supposed to be coming out. Yeah, it says they dropped Lucky Louie. They also dropped The Night of Too Many Stars, which was America Unites for Autism program that he did.
Wow.
Yeah, no, this is...
Whoa.
I mean, we didn't talk about this last time, but like Kevin Spacey is actually being pulled out of...
Because this is news since the last time we
Right,
talked.
right. You know, this stuff is literally happening daily, and I don't know if we can cover this every day because, you know, that's just going to be exhausting. You know, we'll probably, you know, come to it like once a month.
But apparently they're re-releasing, or they're going to release All the Money in the World with Kevin Spacey replaced by Christopher Plummer.
Yeah.
So that's their solution to it, and I don't agree with that morally, but from a business perspective, I understand.
Right, because if Kevin Spacey is on it, then, you know...
People won't pay money to Kevin Spacey.
Yeah,
they need a visual confirmation that he's out financially.
Yeah. Part of me feels bad for the makeup artist. I know that sounds like really crazy for me to say, but like the makeup on Kevin Spacey for All the Money in the World is like really impressive work. And probably would have been nominated. Yeah.
It wouldn't have won compared to The Darkest Hour, because this would be the year in hair and makeup for making old white men look older and whiter and fatter.
Yeah. You know that, and I'm still rooting for Logan to get the nomination for makeup.
It'll probably go to Wonder Woman, which has some of the most egregious, ridiculous hair and makeup. I mean, along with many other things, but not talking about that movie anymore, please.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about it in our discussion about the Justice League movie.
But I will say, this is what we were talking about the sudden implementation of a zero tolerance policy. This is going to be the drawback, is we're going to lose a lot of shit we really like.
Yeah. Losing House of Cards. Well, at least House of Cards with Kevin Spacey.
Taking away House of Cards, though. As in dropping it so you can't watch it anymore.
No. Which... I'm like really curious about if they that is I don't know.
I don't know either.
Cuz after HBO did this with Louis C.K. stuff,
they might follow suit.
Yeah, which means that they would have to pump out another show.
The problem is eventually there are going to be so many people that you can't drop all of everybody's content.
Yeah.
Because then you'll be left with almost no content.
The scary thing for TV is, you know, because there's so many people involved in all this kind of stuff that, you know, it can be detrimental to TV. Like we're at peak television right now, and that could drop if more and more and more names come out, which is what it's looking like right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, as somebody who enjoys television and, you know, enjoys all this stuff, like I'm scared, you know, because I don't want to see, you know, I don't want to see my shows gone. You know, at the same time, I don't want this stuff to go on.
Yeah.
You know, and that puts me at a really awkward place because, you know, obviously I don't want to be selfish enough to say, oh, hey, you know, like this show should stay on, you know, fuck these people, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm not going to do that, you know, but like at the same time, you know, I would hope that most people are good.
Yeah, and I've been saying this, especially like politically. I think most people are decent and intelligent, and then you have, you know, the problem is that bad apples are the ones that stink the most.
Well, and there is a problem in Hollywood of a lot of people getting off the hook for shit that they shouldn't have.
And that's what's nice to see now, is that is starting to become apparently a crackdown across productions.
Yeah, I did see one politician get called out.
Ryan. South Park joke.
Okay. By the way, this week of South Park is one of the best they've come up with.
Oh.
I love that episode.
I was laughing. I wasn't laughing as hard as I was laughing at Box Trolls, but it was pretty close.
Yeah. All right, so let us know what you think about the Louis C.K. stuff, and just put it in the comments below. We'll probably refer to this in, unfortunately, another podcast that will probably come out about somebody else. I'm not trying to capitalize on this, but I do feel that I need to speak about it because this touches me.
Yeah, especially as people in the industry.
Yeah. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back soon. Hopefully about something good. We're going to talk about Thor Ragnarok. That's our next podcast. So stay tuned for that.